Well, yes. Well, thank you all for logging in. As I mentioned earlier, it was just an opportunity for us to get together, but to do something a bit different rather than just having a regular Hui where we connect. It's more around actually, have a bit of a panel discussion with some past chairs and current board members and of course our CEO. So we're going to have Craig, Zoe and the wonderful Katie answer some questions that I've prepared ahead of time, but it's really just to understand and to demystify the path to advocacy and governance and what that looks like, especially as we've all chosen to be part of FLINT and be in the lead team. And Zoe and Katie and myself have had exposure to the board either by being in the intern role like I was this year, or actually be members of the 25Aug's board. And then Craig's also had lots of experience with that as well. So I guess let's kick it off with some intros. For those that don't know Zoe and Katie, maybe we'll start with you, Zoe. Do you want to just sort of give us a bit of a overview of who you are and I guess your journey with FLINT and then into 25Aug so far?
So I'm Zoe Udy. I am based in Wellington. My first exposure to FLINT and 25Aug was when I was a grad in the Vodafone grad program, and that was 2017. I think Craig had simply reached out to our grad manager, and we were all invited along to one of the FLINT events, which was amazing because I didn't grow up in the city. I didn't study in Wellington either. So I was really building new networks and new friendships at the time, and that's what FLINT represented to me. And it was a really great opportunity to meet different people, obviously in a grad program as well. I don't know how many of you have been through grad programs, but the grad program in itself is like a hotbed of new introductions and having a cohort with you. But FLINT really gave us something to do as a group. There were a number of us who used to go along together from Vodafone, but gave me an opportunity to meet other people in Wellington. FLINT Wellington at the time had a lot of members from the public sector, lots of non-tech members as well, which was really great to kind of branch out a little bit. And I still have friends from that kind of period of FLINT. I have, as probably many of you are, have always been someone to put my hand up for organising teams and the like. So was very keen to get involved with helping organise FLINT once I'd been to, I don't know, probably 2 events, the keen bean. But so was one of my now very best friends, and Craig said to us only one of us, because we were both at Vodafone, was allowed to be on the lead team. So we flipped a coin for it, and I was not that person. So my good friend Olivia was on the lead team for probably 6 or 9 months or something, and then she had a focus on something else, decided to step away, and I said to Craig that I was still keen. So I think that's one of the biggest things and has carried on, is if you're passionate about something and you want to be involved, then you've always got to show up and take various opportunities as they come along. So at that time, all of the different FLINT committees were quite unstructured, and we just had Craig's leadership. Great group of people who were organising the events, but not under the structure that you all have now. So we put that in place, and I became the first chair in Wellington. And that was probably a similar time period, 2019, when I nominated myself for the board, basically on the proviso that we were a users association and we didn't have good age diversity on the board. The 25Aug board has always had really good gender diversity. At the time, our chair was Liz Gosling. But the age diversity was kind of I guess it was an issue for me thinking about the advocacy work that 2ANZ was doing, and we'll probably get into that more later, but we do need to be an organisation that represents a really broad range of technology users. So that was really interesting, but it was also about when you want to get involved in something, you have to look for a hook, and boards are, as ours is, elected by the members, but other non-profit boards will be elected by the public, or they will be appointed by a committee, a subset of the existing board. So however that appointment is being made, you will be having to campaign for yourself effectively. So I think having a way to mark yourself as different and a way to communicate really easily what you will bring to the board is really important, and that's what I tried to do in calling out my age very clearly in that first run for the board, and that I could be a voice for kind of digital natives. And obviously that proposition over the last 6 years that I've been on the board has changed. There are several generations younger than me that are technology users, but it's still having that bridging voice, I think, is quite key. And as I've been on the board, my experience has grown in other areas, and now I can offer more than just that one singular viewpoint. Sorry, Zippy, that was a really long introduction, and I've kind of answered some of the other questions.
Sorry, on you go.
I was going to say one of my big pieces of advice, and something that's really important in the governance space, is to be prepared, and that is something that I wasn't able to do to fit in advance of tonight. So I don't have notes here, so some of my answers might be a bit rambling, but please do just move me along for time if necessary.
No, they were great. And before we go to Katie, I've actually just got something that I'd love to ask, because I think a lot of the people in this call may be thinking about getting onto a board, and you mentioned there about campaigning, and that obviously there's different boards and different ways to get on, but what was that actually like to do it for the first time? What sort of things did you have to do around campaigning or anything like that to be successful with your appointment?
Write a compelling blurb for myself, and then because 2ANZ is a membership association, it is quite a closed process. So the nomination materials go out to our members, and there's a voting representative from each member. So within the corporates, that's the person that we mainly communicate with inside that organisation. But 2ANZ is quite straightforward in that manner. So 2ANZ is my only governance role at this stage, but I have got down to, I've done some interview processes for some other boards, and it has been more involved in some of those cases. So recently I put myself forward again, self-nominated for an appointed board role. And they were looking for someone in that aspect. And I think this is really important to highlight, as Craig did in our recent election cycle for a board member. We were looking for people with certain skill sets. So the makeup of the board is a really important aspect of governance. And in the case of the other board that I applied for, they were looking for someone in the technology strategy space and for implementing enterprise level technology. So when I wrote my cover letter for that, and when I tailored my governance CV, which is a completely separate CV to my professional CV, by the way, I was highlighting how 2ANZ, so my existing governance experience, aligns to that, but also how my professional experience did as well. And that process was multiple interviews. So there was an interview with the chair of the board, and then there was an interview with a subset of the existing board, and I ultimately wasn't successful, didn't quite have the makeup of skills that they were looking for. But I think it's really good to go into these processes knowing they will vary, and they can be quite involved and quite demanding.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and great insight as well. I think it also shows like it's been a journey for you as well, and it will continue to do so as you build up on your governance career. So awesome. Well, thanks for that fabulous intro, Zoe. I think now let's go over to the lovely Katie. So yeah, give us a bit of an overview of who you are, your journey with FLINT, and then onto the 2Hands board. Be great to hear from you.
Oh, I've confiscated all the squeaky toys from my dogs now over Zoe's talk. They managed to find every single one of them, so we should be safe now. But I'm Katie Mitchell. I am the Senior People and Culture Business Partner for Enable in Otatahi. I moved down to Christchurch in 2018 for the role for Enable. I was living in Tauranga at the time. And I think it was my second day at Enable, and it was the FLINT Christchurch launch event, and people were trying to drag me along, but on your second day, new job, new city, having just moved over the weekend, I was very tired, and I'm also very glad hearing the stories back that I didn't go because it sounded like a very crazy night, and I don't think I would have been able to go to work on the Wednesday. So after that, I was probably one of the younger employees in the business, especially in the corporate space, and they kind of earmarked me to join the FLINT team and represent Enable. And I remember thinking about it, being like, oh, I don't actually know what this is about, but I'm in a new city. I don't really have many friends. I don't have a professional network. Let's go along and see what it's about. And I really enjoyed the lead team. We had a really strong lead team, and everyone was really nice. So it did make me feel kind of welcomed. Craig was really good at kind of explaining what FLINT was about, which really connected in with my kind of people and culture passion about developing people. And I think most of all, I wasn't very confident back then, and I was really looking for spaces where I could build more connections, and also just from even the public speaking element, I used to call Craig freaking out before even just saying hello at the start of events. So it really was an opportunity for me to kind of grow my confidence. And then I moved from being kind of a team member into leading the team. So I think I was on the FLINT team for about 6 years in total. And then I remember distinctly seeing the announcement of Zoe going onto the board and calling Craig and being like, can we do that? Is that actually something we're allowed to do? Because I was really interested in governance, and I'd always heard of, I'd heard people saying in the business, oh, good luck trying to get that across the board, or I don't think the board's going to go for that, and kind of trying to figure out who these people were, what their qualifications were, and really what they do for a job, because it just seemed so mystical to me at the time. And as I started to learn more in the Enable context, I really wanted to get into governance, and I'm still figuring out whether that's governance as a paid thing or governance, kind of community governance, which is where I'm at the moment. And so, yeah, after seeing Zoe make that step, I started talking to Craig about how I could start moving towards that, and started putting my hand up for a lot more things, saying yes to kind of learn a little bit more about 2Hands as a business rather than just kind of FLINT as a program, and really started to lean in a little bit more. And eventually an opportunity popped up where I could sit in on the finance and risk committee and just listen into those conversations. And particularly for me, finance is definitely a weakness for me. So that was really good for me to understand that side of things and also meet some of the board. And again, when an opportunity popped up, I thought, you know what, let's just give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? I can always apply again. And I was really stoked to get on there. And I think for me, my desire to get on the board was very much around bringing that FLINT voice, because I've always had a real passion for the program, and I've always had the desire to do a little bit more with the program. And so I really wanted to bring that lens and be an advocate for the program. But also, I think my kind of people and culture, soft skills, being to something a little bit different that doesn't always come into the technology side of things. So again, for my own learning, it's good for me to be exposed to those sorts of things, but I just think sometimes it's a different lens that people don't always consider in the technology space.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And yeah, once again, so insightful to just hear that you really leaned into it. Like when you identified that that was something that you wanted to do, it was actually, well, how do you get there? Putting your hand up to do more things, getting that exposure, it does really make a difference. So awesome. And then we do have Craig here as well. So I thought, Craig, why don't you share a bit about your exposure? Obviously, to the 2ANZ board, you have to report to them, but maybe in other governance roles that you've held, or would be good to hear from you as well.
Yeah, thanks, Zibby. Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate in some of the things that I've got involved in. I think it started really back when, in my last corporate role at Chorus, where I was on the exec, and we didn't have a board to start with, but we had to interact with the CEO and the CFO at Telecom New Zealand. So we're a separate organisation, but we were still part of Telecom. So, having to write reports, advocate for them in front of other people who were more governance than leadership, and also defend them, it was a really interesting experience. And then when we demerged, I didn't have much to do with the board at all, because I wasn't on the exec anymore. Funny story, I was the one that took my predecessor here at 2ANZ out for lunch and told him that we weren't joining, that Chorus wasn't going to give 2ANZ any money. So yeah, and then they got all shitty with us. But anyway, look, I got the job, and then 3 years later I got the job. And I suppose that's a little story to think about as well, in that it's common, what we've heard from Zoe and Katie as well, is that sometimes these opportunities arise and you might think you're not the right person, or you might think can't do everything, or that something might be against you. I mean, I had been the one that had told 2ANZ we weren't joining them, and I had been made redundant at Chorus and had a 6-month period that I was working out, and the 2ANZ job came up, and I thought, I'm not applying for that, because one is I don't know if I can run a consumer advocacy group, but also, and I knew nothing about running membership associations, and also, why would they pick me when I'd been the nasty one that told them we weren't giving any money, And so it was only on the second to last day of things being open that my colleague who was sitting next to me, who now runs the Everest Foundation, but she said to me, you need to apply for this job. And I'm like, that ain't gonna take me. She said, no, you got to put it in. So I did, and I got an interview, and here we are. Because I didn't know that what they weren't necessarily looking for a replication of the person they had, who'd been a journalist and was very good in the media, but not very good at anything else. Not very good at running an association, had basically run it down, there was no money. So they were looking for someone who had some financial experience and a bit of, maybe a little bit more, less out there. I don't anyway, that was sort of, so that's where you've got to go. You've got to rely on, talk about the things you bring to the role, because you don't know always what they're bringing. So obviously I've been working with the 2ANZ board now for 11 years. They are technically they are 2ANZ. They represent the members. They are the governance. I simply serve at their pleasure. They can sack me. I think I get a month's notice, maybe 3 months' notice. They can choose to do different things, but they are, and it's been fascinating. When I first started, the board was 12 members, I think, and 11 were old white guys. So they were all looking like me. So we had to work hard on that one. So Zoe and Katie have done amazingly well to change that, and we are much more of a balanced board when it comes to gender these days. And it took me a while. I mean, I was very fortunate in that the chair was a guy called Pat O'Connell. He was the CIO for Rank Group, which is that is owned, that company's owned by New Zealand's richest man. So Pat was flying up and backwards and forwards to Chicago every second week. So he's one of those Air New Zealand people that turn up in a choral club and they take him to a special room and then escort him onto a plane, even if it's only to Christchurch. So, you know, yeah. And yet he was so down to earth. He would ring me every second week to see how I was going. And, you know, we lengthened it out after a while. But turning up to the board is so different because technically the board is only it's only giving direction when it is the board. Does that make sense? So, for example, at the moment, you know, Zoe's on the board at the moment. She's deputy chair, but she can't tell me what to do right now. Well, she probably could, but I'd probably do it. But, you know, she doesn't have a, there's no legitimate or legal power in her as deputy chair until the board meets, and then the board meets, and that's when I'm in front of the board. So when I go to a board meeting, that's my 2 monthly performance review, because they're looking at what am I doing, how are we going, what are we doing, all those sort of things. So I mean, and I've been very fortunate to work with some very good people on the board. You know, they are hard questions sometimes. You know, why is there no money in the bank, or why are you doing this FLINT thing and can't we make any money out of it? There's all sorts of things, you know, and board members always have good ideas. Yeah. Yeah, so that's an ongoing thing, obviously. Then on the other side, I've been on the board of AUSA, that's the Australasian Society of Association Exec. That's an elected board, so you're elected by the members. It's an Australian-based limited company, so I'm an Australian director, and I am on that board as the representative of New Zealand. Look, there's a whole story about what's happened in the last 12 months with that space, but that's been fascinating, you know, because my first board meeting in person over in Sydney was the guys that were running huge associations. You know, the guy that was running the Sydney business, you know, the equivalent of the Auckland Chamber of Commerce in Sydney is enormous. You know, and he's here in a suit and tie and telling, you know, and they're all talking about the restaurants they've been to and stuff. And it's like, oh, crap. So, you know, it can be at this point, you know, even I can find myself in a position of, I'm not quite sure how I fit in there. So I just decided I was from New Zealand and I was just going to stand up for us, you know. And then the other board I'm on at the moment is Katoa Connect. That is the old 2020 Trust. So that's computers and homes. It's doing a lot of computer stuff with, takes a lot of government funding. That is a trust and that's appointed. So you can apply for the roles, but the board appoints its replacements, which is interesting because then you do go through the interview scheme. So I went through 2 rounds of interviews for that one. I'm now on the finance, and I'm now the chair of the Finance and Risk Committee, but I'm about to have to step off because my term limit, I'm about to hit my term limit. So yeah, it's a bit disappointing because I so like that one. That's its social one. And then I have had a couple of other boards that I've applied for, had some interviews, and like Zoe, not got through. But you know, it's all good experience. Got to have a go. Go look for opportunities. So I didn't get on one board last year, and then they turned around and said, we think you're great anyway, so we're going to pay for you to go and do the Institute of Directors course, which is like 10 grand. You know, so there are other things that come your way through putting your name out there. Yeah, so
well, that's a good question, actually, just when you're on that, is what does that look like? Like, are some board roles paid? Are some board roles voluntary?
Yeah.
Just to anyone, actually.
Yep. So our board is voluntary, which means that we don't overload them. So we don't expect them to do too much outside the board meeting, except the chair. He would like to get to the point where we could pay, but we, you know, all our money is going into our members. Katoa Connect pays their board members an honorarium. AUSA don't pay theirs; they're all volunteers, but they pay for your travel. And a couple other boards I've applied for do pay, but they're the ones I haven't got onto yet. So. But yeah, so you know, it's a wide range, and if you look. You know, there's quite a few places you can look online around boards, and it tells you whether it's voluntary or paid.
Cool. All right.
on that, because it's kind of follows on, I believe it's called Onboard, is a program that you can apply for, that you basically learn about governance and you get to sit in on boards and that sort of thing. I was actually recommended it from a mentor quite a few years ago. So yeah, it's something to have a look at.
Well, that's cool. And I was going to actually have a follow-up question for you, Katie, from something that you said just around community governance. That's an area that I'm interested in, and I am on the board for Seeds to Feeds now, which is really cool. It's an organisation I've been involved in. But yeah, what do you do in the community governance space?
Yeah, so I'm on the board of the Big Brothers Big Sisters Christchurch. So it's an organisation that basically provides mentoring for young children that kind of not at risk because they'd go through oranga tamariki, but more so those that are flying under the radar that could slip into that space. So it really provides role models for kids. So I've been on that board since 2021, maybe, I think.
Awesome. Oh, that's great. And yes, as Craig said, if you've got any questions, pop them in chat and we'll come back to them. But I'll go into one of my questions that I've got for you. Zoe, we'll start with you. What was it that surprised you most about the inner workings of a board level decision making? Yeah. Or just the workings of the board.
This was interesting. Nothing immediately springs to mind, and perhaps that is because it has been 6 years that I've been on the 2ANZ board. I think the level of collaboration probably between management, being Craig and to some extent the Onsell team who help us with operations, and the board. I think to some extent that is not always the case, but because Craig has been in his role for many years and the board has a lot of trust in Craig.
Yeah, I was going to say it's trust, isn't it?
Yeah, and likewise we have a board that has a really good makeup of skills, and there are people with kind of specific areas of interest and expertise. So the conversations at the board table really go both ways. It's not, Craig described it as a 2-monthly performance review, and that's not how I see it. And I know that's not how, I won't speak for all of them, but I know that's certainly not how some of my colleagues on the board see it either. It's not Craig giving a report and us purely saying yes or no, endorsing or not endorsing. It's a conversation. There's questions. There is room for discussion in both directions. Craig made that comment that board members always have great ideas, and we don't, because ideas will be brought up at the board table and they might be challenged by other people at the board table. They might be challenged directly in that session by Craig himself. So I know that that's not how all boards work, especially in the community governance and not-for-profit sector. Another resource that you all might want to look into is Community Governance Aotearoa. They run mentoring programs. They run, they've just launched a certification that you can do in this space, and you don't need to be on a board to do that. If it's something that's of interest, that's a way, like some of the boards that Craig and I have probably applied to want you to have that IOD endorsement. That's an investment you can make in your own education if you want to. Maybe some of your workplaces will fund that. I don't know. But where was this going? I was involved in one of their programs a few years ago, and we had a lot of people from the Wellington region from a huge variety of not-for-profit organisations. So Football Wellington, the Vogelmorn Trust, which runs like a community hall and community engagement, medical trusts, just a huge rainbow Aotearoa, places like this. Anyway, there were a number of people kind of raising that the management, one of the common concerns in the not-for-profit space is that the line between the management and governance layer is quite blurred. And people in the governance role can be expected to be quite hands-on. So I think that's something to also be aware of if you're stepping into this space, is understanding, because if you're going into interviews, you will be asked, what is the role of a governance board? What is the role that you want to play as a board member? And it is not to manage the organisation, and it shouldn't be. But if you have a board that's humming and you have a management team that works really well, then, you know, it can be collaborative and it can be complementary without either party overstepping.
That's very insightful.
Yeah. And like Katie, I have done a turn on our finance and risk subcommittee, and that was probably maybe not surprising, but the biggest area of growth. Like, there's just so much to the finances of running an organisation like 2ANZ, with the different programs that we fund, the different ways that money's coming in as well. So yeah, that's been a really interesting space.
Awesome. Yeah, so when you're on a board, then maybe just describe a wee bit about those committees, subcommittees. What does that actually look like? And so, 2ANZ board.
On the 2ANZ board, our only subcommittee, our only permanent subcommittee, is the Finance and Risk Committee. We are responsible for providing financial oversight. So at the general board meetings, of which we have 6 a year, there is a discussion on finances, but it's at a higher level. So the Finance and Risk Subcommittee has already met. They've met with Craig and our finance manager to go through the detailed finance reports for that month. The chair of our committee has then compiled a report, and that's what goes to the board. So there are still questions about finances. Of course, as there should be. It's the responsibility of the whole board to be across the comings and goings of money for the organisation. But the real challenging and detailed conversations happen at the subcommittee. Risk is generally, my understanding of board structures is they are usually coupled, but the risk that we're looking at in that committee isn't just financial risk, it is organisational risk. So similarly to all your organisations that will have an enterprise risk function, it's about seeing what might be coming up, changes to the market environment. In our space, we look at changes in the government as a risk, because that affects funding of our programs, that affects connectivity issues, small, medium business issues, all these things that we have an advocacy lens on that might change the way we approach things in the future. That's a risk to how we do business, right? It's not a risk to 2ANZ existing or not existing, but it's a risk to our operations. We have had, our constitution has been under review. It will be being approved at the AGM, upcoming AGM. We've had to do this, and fingers crossed, as has a lot of different organisations amongst New Zealand, because of legislative changes requiring updates to trust and charities constitutions. We have had a working group, which has effectively been a subcommittee of the board, but with representation from different members and other interested parties as well. But that has been spun up to address the specific constitutional change that we were working through. But that's certainly something that the board will do when required. If something needs to be addressed and it's appropriate that it's done by members of the board, it can be spun up as a committee. Therefore, there's work ongoing outside of the board activities, and they report back to the rest of us.
Cool. No, that's good. Gives a good, clear explanation of what that looks like. So thank you. What about you, Katie? What was your biggest surprises or, when you joined the board?
I think the biggest surprise to me, particularly with the Two Hands board, was just, I guess, there was quite a lot of diverse voices in the room, and there was quite a lot more collaboration than I thought there was going to be. In my mind, I probably thought, if a paper went up or information was being talked about, that the subject matter experts might be just talking on that. But when I was kind of preparing for board meetings and reading the documentation, I found myself obviously asking questions and would bring those to the board meetings. But I think I was really surprised at the level of conversation that was probably happening about things. I'd had a lot of exposure to the Enable board, been on the, I have to do papers and stuff for the People and Culture subcommittee, and that feels a little bit different. It is your traditional type of governance around I guess, they're not subject matter experts in any sense of the matter. They're just really trying to dig in to validate what we're trying to say. But I did feel like the Two Hands was very collaborative. And again, comparing to the Big Brothers, Big Sisters, that is where Zoe was talking about governance being different to kind of operational. And that role is very operational as a board. And we're trying to consistently bring everyone back up to the governance level. So that's a bit of a work on for us. But it was a step change from being a board member for Big Brothers Big Sisters to Two Hands, because you've as Zoe said, there's a high level of trust in Craig to do his job, but you've just got to deal with the information that you've got. And again, I think having an opinion that could determine an outcome versus, I guess, just having an opinion to give an opinion at the FLINT level was also, I was very conscious of.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you. What about you, Craig? Even not just around the Two Hands board, was there anything when you started your governance journey that was surprising, or because it's a totally new landscape, I guess, to navigate, rather than, as you say, if you're working in a business to then actually going into a governance role?
I just recalling that my actual first governance role was on a school board. I'd forgotten that. I was on a board of trustees. Cynthia had said, if you stand for the board, because you get paid for being on a school board, not much, $50 a month or something. If you stand for the school board, you can get Sky, because we didn't have Sky at the time. So I thought, okay, have a go. I didn't. This was before Sky Digital or satellite. So when the guy came around and installed Sky, he said, oh no, you're not going to be able to get it here. So I couldn't even get it. Anyway. That one was really interesting, because that's the school board is elected, and it has elected from the parents. And there were people on that board that came with issues, and they came with a position already. So they were there because they wanted to either be somebody in the community, or they wanted to push something, or they wanted to, they didn't like the way the teachers were teaching, so they wanted to have a go at that, which you don't as a school board. So that was really eye-opening on figuring out how to manage your way through that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And because I'm an accountant, I often get asked to do finance stuff straight off. So I had to get into the finances of the school. So that was really surprising for me, in that not everybody was there. I mean, here I am telling you I went on the board to get $50 to pay for Sky. That's not a great reason, but you go on the board because you want to do something right. And I suppose that's when I started working with the Two Hands board. Everyone that's there is there because they're a volunteer. They want to be involved in the direction of the organization, but also believe in its vision and what it's doing. And so it's that comes back to that collaboration that Katie and Zoe talk about. I can't really recall in all my time, there might be one or two board members that were probably a little bit off
Not
the
the right
wall,
fit.
or a little bit self-interested, but most of the time everyone that I've had on the board is, really just thought about the organisation, because I do have an induction process for every board member. So if you become a member of a board like 2ANZ, you have to sign some legal documentation, because you must declare all your conflicts of interest. You must accept insurance cover. So our board members have insurance cover for if they do something, if we do something silly, or we leave, or I do something stupid, Eden probably able to tell you better about that sort of thing, because I don't look at it very often, but it's third party and public liability and all those, what happens if we have an event and people are injured and all those sort of things, and we haven't done our health and safety thing. So they do that, but I also have a pack that I've developed over 10 years, and it's even better now than when Katie saw it, which takes people through, how does the organisation work? What's its legal structure? What's your responsibility? And my big line with people is, once you're on the board, when you're meeting as a board, you're no longer like Katie, you're no longer representing Enable. You are there to make decisions for the best interests of the organisation.
Yeah.
So you must think about 2ANZ and what we're doing, rather than, what does Enable want out of this? Or what would, it may be a decision that's, for example, your organisation, it might be, I don't know, because we're in the advocacy space as well, we might be saying something that one of our members doesn't like, and you might be their board member. Well, unfortunately, you have to suck it up, because, collective decision making, if you really don't like it, you can resign. But collective decision making. So that was, that's really important, I think, is that board members understand that they are there to make decisions for the best interests of the organisation. That's governance. It's governance and strategy. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I remember when I first came on as the board intern, we did a kind of around the room, and it was really interesting to me to hear people's why they had decided to join the board. And there was quite differing things across, people had different interests, but overall it was, things that 2ANZ are all passionate about and that they strive to achieve. So I thought that was a really nice introduction when I first started, is just to learn from those people that are there, what their kind of motivators are to join.
And that's not something, although maybe it should be, Craig, that we do at every meeting or every new iteration of the board, which will be like our October meeting following the September AGM, where new members may be elected. We were doing that, Zibby, because further to my comment that I've just replied to Eddie, because we were reviewing our vision statement for 2ANZ at the time. And the board of 2ANZ, but in every scenario, it's the board's responsibility generally to set that vision and mission statement for the organisation, if not to endorse a statement that has been written by management, depending on how the organisation is structured. But it's certainly something that the board needs to endorse, and then that is what we as a collective group are striving towards. I do think, and further to what I said at the beginning about kind of putting yourself forward to perhaps represent a subset of our membership base, everyone will come to the board table with their own experiences and generally a sector of Aotearoa that they are most passionate about, and there is room for bringing those opinions. You just need to be able to compromise or think of the greater good, any terminology you want to use there, be able to set that aside where it's not appropriate to only vote in the interests of young professional woman from Wellington, But for example, we had a woman on our board for 1 term or 2 terms who was also on the board of Rural Women Aotearoa, and so she had strong opinions about the rural community and rural connectivity, and that was always welcomed because that was an opinion and a lens that is
Mhm.
valuable to us when that's part of the cohort that we're representing.
Yeah.
Sorry, Craig.
Yeah, no, I was just going to call out the strategy stuff, because you're right. Most organizations, like a big corporate, like Enable or Chorus or something,
Mhm.
they'll have a strategy team that will do a strategy, and then they'll take it to the board will discuss it. But the board is the one that signs off strategy. And so for us at the end of last year, actually Zoe took the lead. She took the lead, and we worked together on a draft strategy. We took it to the board. The board spent an hour and a half, a good hour and a half, going through it, what their thoughts were, where we'd missed the boat, what we could do differently, and sent us off again. So it was actually, it was probably the best strategy process that we've run, because we were able to take in everyone's opinion. And it was also, look, at a practical level, because we were able to record that session and then use the AI tools to pull out information from it. There's an example of where we, it was just the process was just so much better, because we could, we didn't have to sit there writing notes and stuff. So, use all the tools you've got. But Zoe did an amazing job at pulling that together and getting us through to that point. And then what happens, of course, is now I'm the one that has to turn it into action.
Yeah.
But that's what should happen, right? The board should be asking me, where are you in these things? Yeah. I'll throw it around the other way too, because I've been talking to my chair and at some stage we want to get a new chair around. The board is also responsible for me. So as the most senior employee, no one asks me how I'm doing. I don't have a manager that asks me what my KPIs are, etc. That's the board chair's job. So there's another task that happens to go to the chair or can be delegated. So that's another thing. And there's certainly been other board members who have felt that was something they really wanted to make sure every board meeting, how are you doing, Craig? What are you, are you too busy, etc., etc. Yeah, so that's another thing, because you have to look after the people in your organisation as well. Yeah,
of course.
Cool.
Nice, thanks, Craig. We've got a couple more, and then if there's any other questions from everyone else, please fire them through. I think this is a really good one, just around navigating the shift of being a Flint leader to becoming a strategic voice in that 2Anne's board. Was it quite daunting to start participating in your first board meetings and contributing? How did you find it? We'll go to you, Katie.
Yeah, this was my one that I wanted to talk about the most, because I think when I first joined the board, I think there was probably a level of assumption that I knew more than I did when I kind of came into the board orientation. And so me coming in, reading all the papers, that sort of thing, I was picking up a lot of stuff that I just had no clue about. And so I kept asking lots of questions. I kept calling Craig and be like, what is this? I don't actually understand what this is. I would pick up a lot of even people just talking about things in board meetings, like little bits of technology, or talking about different kind of things happening through ComCom, and I'd just note those down to start researching later. I'd say that it probably took me the full 2-year term to start to feel comfortable and confident in my space being there, but I kind of got to the point where I looked at what the roadmap was for the future and was like, I actually think someone else should take my place. I don't think my time is right now to be here. I think I need to go away and come back at a different time. And that's when I made the decision to leave, because I think it's important as a board member to recognize when you're sitting in a space and just holding a space, or the organization could use someone different. And that's kind of what I realized. I think for my own personal development, if I'd stuck around for another 2 years, I think I would have been able to contribute a lot more. But I just recognized that it was probably my time to step away and again come back at a different time. So I think that it took me that full 2 years of grappling, because you've only got 6 meetings, right, every year, and it just takes a long time for that shift. So I was just trying to be kind to myself and not put too much pressure on myself to feel like it's that whole imposter syndrome, to feel like I should be doing more than I was, which I did struggle with a bit, but just had to keep reminding myself that it's my first kind of proper adult board position as such, and just soak up all the learning opportunities, ask lots of questions.
Yeah. No, that's great, and I think that's so good to hear from you, that like what that journey was like. And I think now that we've got the board intern role through FLINT, this is such a good opportunity. Like, I've done it this year, and much like you, I probably at the beginning I'm like, oh my goodness, like you are a bit out of your depth and you're getting there. But it's such an amazing learning opportunity to see conversations at that level. You're in a room with people that are very experienced and you can speak a lot about the specific topics. But yeah, I think it's awesome now that FLINT, for those that don't know, have a board intern that instead of being able to shadow, because we used to be invited to shadow board meetings once in a blue moon, but now you can actually take on that role of the board intern and do it for a 12-month period, so get to actually be at 6 of those board meetings. So
and I really encourage people to take part in that, because I can't even explain to you the amount of growth I had in that 2 years and how much value that's added to my core role. Just even understanding how, I guess, the conversations and decisions that go on in running an organization helped me stretch my thinking way further in my current organization, of thinking, what are the different strategic levers that are being pulled right now, and how do I need to communicate what I need to get across to, I guess, get the buy-in across different parts of the organization. My priorities are not the same as operations or finance priorities. How do I need to pull my pieces of information together to get everyone on board? So it's helped immensely.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Katie. What about you, Zoe? What was that? I mean, it's been 6 years now. If you can rewind back to you stepping into that first board meeting, what was it like, and what was that journey like up to you now being deputy chair of the 2hands board?
Yeah, I think I was more intimidated by the individuals in the room than the governance setting. There were and are some really accomplished individuals who have held positions on the 2hands board. So there's a little bit of, I think, my general attitude in that and in my professional setting, and I know it's not something that comes naturally to everyone, but a little bit of fake it till you make it, and kind of try and own the space as much as you can. I certainly remember feeling nervous and probably not being as extroverted and outspoken as I often am at those. Actually, what I remember is that it got a lot more difficult when COVID hit. So casting my mind back as best I can is that there were nerves to begin with, but if I'm really thinking hard about it, they hit even more when we had to transition to doing everything remote. So my first perhaps 2 board meetings were in person in Auckland, and they were nerve-wracking, and there was some level of intimidation. But like I said, these are all like very accomplished people, but they are all people. And you guys all know that from interacting with Craig. Like, Craig has had a really amazing career, and he is now chief executive of a huge organization in New Zealand with a really outsized media presence as well. So all of us, if we didn't know Craig and get the privilege to interact with him and have him as a mentor in some cases and in some respects, would probably look at Craig and be like, whoa, he'll probably be scary to talk to. But then you meet him and he's absolutely not. But I think when we stepped back and had to go through COVID and do all of our board meetings remotely and face all these challenges all the challenges of COVID, which were really significant for 2ANZ, where we get a lot of our income from hosting events and doing all of that in person. We had to change the way we did things. And I remember it being even more difficult to speak up in a remote setting, because when you're speaking in a meeting like this, I don't know, there's just an extra layer, I think. I don't know whether you can all relate to that, maybe being, a lot of you maybe only started your careers kind of when things are remote first, but that was probably one of my biggest challenges, was learning to still take up the space and still have confidence and still feel inclined to jump in and speak up when sessions were being held remotely. Sorry for another question. I cannot stress enough the importance of being prepared for board meetings, reading board papers, understanding the media landscape that we're in, the changes that have been made to policy, if that's the space you're in. And I do apologise to everyone on the call that I wasn't as prepared for this session. But hopefully the rambling has led to some.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. This is just to give everybody, I guess, the opportunity to hear from people that have made that transition, which will lead into my last question, and then we can see if anyone's got any questions before we wrap it up. But what would your advice be? We've kind of covered it, but for Flint members that are wanting to make that leap into governance roles or put their hand up for an advocacy position as well, what's your kind of biggest advice? And we'll start with you, Craig. We'll go to you first, and then we'll go to Katie and then Zoe.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Well, maybe I'll cover off a few things at this point, because I talk about the board, just how we work. Because I think because we are an elected board, you're not going to go through an interview process, so you've probably got a little bit more chance of getting on than you might have, because Zoe's an amazing example, because she's been re-elected at least twice. We haven't announced the latest elections, and even the first time, and she is a young upcoming leader, and has been consistently been re-elected onto the board. So members have seen the value of having a person like that on the board. So there is an opportunity for you if you think you've got an opportunity. I do say that our board is a hard board to get onto and really hard to get off. So once you're on the board, you tend not to be elected off or lose an election. But the new constitution actually is going to introduce term limits. So people will only be able to serve for 6 years. And so there will be more opportunity to, step up, because people will have to step off the board. I mean, some people, if I go back to the history of the organisation, there's been board members, 12, 13 years. So, and you can't have that as a board. So that's one thing to just keep an eye on. So that will be the next election around. And because members choose, as Zoe said, you need to pitch, what are you bringing to the table? It's not just, I'm a software engineer. It's Zoe and Katie brought to the table, I am a young person who's had this, been involved in Flint, and I can bring that voice. Yeah. The board intern position, which Zoe talked about, she's still in that for another 2 weeks. And I would like to announce here, because we're together, that our next intern for the next 12 months is Eden. So the board asked Eden to step into that role. I think next year we'll probably go out earlier, because it is only the second year we've run it, and so the board is a little bit more directive. So so Eden's going to be your representative intern for the next 12 months, and then we'll probably go out. The other thing, just the last one, the Finance and Risk Committee you talked about, Zoe. So one of the things we can do as a board is, in those committees, have non-board members
Mm.
in there, and so you might see a request come out saying we need somebody with this particular skill to be on this particular committee. And look, if you've got those skills, put your hand up, because the board will look at favorably at people who are involved in Flint leadership, because they really value the work you do, and the commitment that you're making to it. So but otherwise, as the other two said, if you think you want to have a crack, you got to get your name out there. So if you want to stand for the board, stand for the board. You might not get on. I mean, we had 12 people go for 5 positions, and so 7 people now have to get a phone call to say that they're not on the board, or not on the board anymore. So it is a bit of a competition in two ends. But if you don't get your name out there, people won't know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So take the most of the opportunities, and if I, sometimes I'll need somebody somewhere to go and represent Two Hands to do something. Don't be scared of putting your hand up as well, because that really helps us. And I tell the board if you've done something for us. If someone's gone to do something for us, we'll let the board know.
Mm.
Can I just jump in really quickly, Zabi?
Yeah. I'll finish.
Zabi and Craig, that it doesn't also have to be through that formal channel. Like, if this is something that all of you on the call are interested in, then you should express that to Craig. You are very welcome to add me on LinkedIn and message me. Like, we can only advocate for you. We can only help you. We can only have informal conversations with you about which direction you should go and which skills you should practice and train before you come to the formal opportunity, if you let us know that that's where you want to head and what your interest is in. So please don't be strangers. Like Craig said, I know what commitment volunteering as part of Flint is. We couldn't run the Flint program without volunteers. So if there is a way that Craig and I and others, there are other colleagues on the board who I know are open to this as well. So if you want to have a conversation with someone, please reach out, because we can make that happen, and that's one way that we can give back to you all.
And I second that. Being sitting in that intern role, there were so many people colleagues of yours on the board that we're talking about how can they support people in Flint, or are like open to have those discussions. And I think we had like drinks once with the Auckland lead team members, and there were board members there, and there was really good conversation about people's development and that sort of thing. So I think it's second that for sure.
And you all have the opportunity, like having this conversation now is probably a really good inflection point. You've got a week, 2 weeks before we meet in Auckland for the Flint Strategy Day, which a number of my colleagues will be attending as well, but you'll have the opportunity to meet more of them the following day at the Tech Users Summit. So think on what we've discussed tonight, and if there are any further questions or anything specific you want to know, that's a really great opportunity to bring it to us then.
Awesome. And then Katie, what about you in terms of advice for people making that leap or shift?
I think my biggest piece of advice is definitely say yes to opportunities, and don't wait necessarily till you feel you're ready, because sometimes that's too late. But not only just say yes to opportunities, but ask. There's literally no harm in asking. And if you have an interest in a particular area, like as both Craig and Zoe have said, is have a chat to Craig if you're interested in governance and those sorts of things, because there are things that you can do to prepare before I guess putting yourself forward for the board. And as Zoe said as well, be prepared. There is content that you've got to read before those sessions, so you really need to put in the time to not only read it, but like digest it and think about it, and whether you have any questions, have any thoughts. And for me, that did involve a lot of research as well, just to kind of understand things a little bit more deeply. And also, if there is any opportunities where you can sit in on board meetings in your organisation, you can ask that. and practice using your voice in different forums so that you do get confident and comfortable to, I guess, speak your piece.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll open up the floor. If anyone's got a question they want to ask, you know, pop it in the chat or just take your mic off and ask the question. But that's been a really good discussion, and I've loved hearing your journeys, you know, from your early stages of governance to where you're at now and what that looks like and all the kind of nuggets of wisdom that you've passed on. I think we can all learn something from it. So thank you so much. Anybody got anything else that they want to add?
I was just going to answer Eddie's question around mentors. So Zoe's right. There are board members who are keen to be, or, you know, who are open to that sort of thing as well. So I know Carrie from the FMA, financial management, financial, what are they called? No, I can't remember.
Authority.
Yeah, the people that just, you know, took a license off somebody. Yeah, so, you know, people like her, she's going to actually be at the FLINT leaders, the chairs meeting, because she wants to talk about mentoring. So, you know, there are people like her and others that would be interested in helping. And, you know, and Zoe and Katie, you know, Katie's in Christchurch, so I'm sure she wouldn't say no to being bought a drink or a cup of coffee or something if you want to talk to her about it. Yeah.
Always available.
Also, sorry, I was just on the drive home in my car, so I had my camera off and lots of road rage going on. Probably you didn't need to hear on top of my questions. Bloody Aucklanders. Katie, I'm actually down in Christchurch at the end of next month, and I would love to catch up with you if I could, as Craig suggested, take you out for a drink or a coffee.
Absolutely. Just flick me a message on LinkedIn or something and we can meet up.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll catch up with Zoe and the rest at the Land conference as well.
Awesome. All right, well, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, everybody, for jumping on. I hope this was of value, and if it was, we can definitely kind of roll some more things out like this throughout the year. I think it's always good just to do something a wee bit different and actually try and give back, you know, something to you all for volunteering your time and upskill everybody as well. So thank you all. Have a wonderful evening, and looking forward to seeing a few of you. We've got our Flint Welly quiz next Wednesday, and then obviously the planning and stuff going on the following week. So lots going on.